I'm going to start off just by introducing a little bit about why we think our programme of strategic farms is really fit for purpose and fit for the future in terms of what we can deliver through that programme before I introduce our 4 speakers. And it is about, in terms of thinking about that future, that very uncertain future that lies ahead of us. We have heard a lot about Brexit, and I am going to mention it right at the very beginning, not least because of the work that AHDB has been doing in relation to horizon scanning. And if you haven't already picked up our horizon document, which covers the future potentially for potato products, but also looking at some of our scenarios around what a post-Brexit future might mean for our industry, then I do encourage you to go and do that. But in terms of how we can respond, I think one of the things that we really need to think about is how we up our game, how we ensure that our businesses are fit and resilient in order to deliver against what that future might hold for us. And what's very clear is that one of the things that we really need to think about is how we can increase our productivity. That isn't just in relation to growing more yields, having bigger crops. What that really means is how we can grow more for less, how we can look at all aspects of our business to ensure that we are not only producing good yields of good quality, but we're also cutting our costs. And there are a number of things that we in AHDB are doing in relation to that, particularly associated with our Farm Excellence platform. We're also rolling out a new program of benchmarking, a benchmarking tool called Farm Bench. Many of you might have already seen that on our stand. And again, if you haven't had a chance to go and have a look at it, we've got people from our farm economics team who are demonstrating that live, and we'd be very happy to register you and show you how to use that. But the core bit of what we're doing in terms of really encouraging our growers to really take that step and become fit for the future is around the strategic farms. Our strategic farms are delivering 3 really important things. First and foremost, they're presenting research, much of which we know has been ongoing in our research institutes and universities. They're presenting it in a commercial setting, really testing it in that commercial world to really test whether or not the outputs from that research are fit for purpose. Secondly, we're able to demonstrate that research in a way that's really accessible to other farmers and growers. And that's where these guys come in. That we know very well that there's nothing more inspiring to other farm businesses than to see farm businesses actually putting something in action. And thirdly, and this is really important, through that connection back into the research community, we're actually demonstrating and showing what research needs to be done to ensure that it's better targeted. We're providing that feedback to inform and develop new research that is more targeted at genuine farmers' needs. Now, our spot farms were the pioneers of this process, and some of them have been going for a couple of years, and we're already starting to deliver results through those. And it is a real privilege to invite spot farmers to come along and present to you about their experience. We also have 2 fairly newer spot farmers who will be talking to you about what they expect to get out of their programme over the coming years. So our first speaker is Kerr Howatson, who is from Spot Farm Scotland, Bruce Farms in Scotland, and has, I'm sure, a wealth to tell us about his experience as a farmer, but also perhaps in terms of our meeting this afternoon, his experience as a spot farmer. So first of all, over to you, Kerr.
Good afternoon. As Susanna kindly said, my name is Kerr Howatson. I am the farm manager at Bruce Farms in Scotland, which is the spot host farm for the Spot project. Spot Farm Scotland, in case you don't know, we are situated about 20 miles northeast of Perth, in the sort of the heart of the the potato ground in Scotland. We are based in the Vale of Strathmore, which is a valley between the Grampian Mountains on the north and the Sidlaw Hills in the south. A wee bit about Bruce Farms. Bruce Farms is a family-owned farming company, say based near Perth. We are farming about 750 hectares of owned land. In addition to that, we rent on a seasonal basis about 4,000 hectares. Most of our soil types will vary from sandy light soil right the way through to heavy clay. The majority of this will be of a medium loam. Crops on the farm include potatoes, cereals, strawberries, blackcurrants, peas, beans, and a pedigree herd of Charolais cattle. We are quite proud to be long-held and trusted suppliers of the number of the world's most respected food and retail brands, including Birdseye, Ribena, Albert Bartlett's, and Marks and Spencer's. On the potato production side of the business, we are growing about 285 hectares of salad and main crop potatoes. Most of them are grown for packing. Our varieties include Maris Peer, Maris Piper, Osprey, Saxon, and of course the Albert Bartlett's famous Rooster variety. 75% of our potatoes are grown at our base in Perth. The other 25% is grown in the Scottish borders, which is something we've been doing for a number of years. We've been growing down in the borders for about 6 years. The main reason is we're slightly earlier down there. We can spread our machinery and all our costs. Approximately 80% of our potato area is irrigatable. Bruce Farms potatoes flourish in some of the best soils in Scotland, and all our potatoes are sent to Albert Bartlett's in Airdrie. Our potato harvest usually starts around the third week of July with our salad potatoes, and it will continue to early October. And between the two bases we've got roughly about 10,000 tonnes of cold storage. Our potato rotation is based on one potato crop in every 6 years. The Spot Farm project for us, we've just completed our first full year. We dipped our toe in the water in 2016. We did a few cultivation trials, but 2017 is a sort of big year for us. The first year, it's a 3-year project. It's completely Scottish government funded. The main aim is to focus on potato production. We're quite keen on field scale trials. We didn't want to have replicated plots all the way across the field, and we felt it was a good network to meet people to improve our business. This is a map roughly of our field. We've got our cultivation, seed spacing, nutrition, and cover crop plots. Why did we get involved? We were keen to do field scale trials, which Claire at the AHDB was very supportive of. We wanted to challenge the current practice in growing potatoes. We felt there was a lot more to be learned, and we could continue to do that. A lot of new technology that we maybe don't know about, maybe don't see. That was something that we're really interested in. And the main aim was to sort of increase our profitability. If we could tweak 2 or 3 wee things over the 3 years to increase our profit, then that's what we were looking for. The other thing was to learn how others do potatoes. I think there's quite a lot of information can be gleaned from farm visits and looking around other people's farms. As I said, 2016 we did a wee bit of cultivations, just to dip our toe in the water. We got some really good results. These are sort of some of the results here. We successfully proved that less tillage, bed tilling, stone separating actually gave us a higher yield. Not only that, it gave us a higher pack out. Number 7 there, we ridged up the field, no bed tilling and slightly shallower separating. We took these results right the way through to pack out. They were all through Albert Bartlett's factory, and that's the results we've got back. This is some of the reams of information and figures that we've gained over our first year, right the way through from labour, fuel usage, everything is recorded from scratch. And then you'll see on this side, this is all our pack out details from Bartlett's. In our 2016 results, what we wanted to know, measurements, we want to measure every single possible bit of our potato production, then break down the costs. We wanted to find out what the cheapest cultivation was and whether it was going to give us the best pack out. We did not want to jeopardise our quality at all, so that's why we're keen to stick to all that. Project themes for 2017 for this year, we had We've got a steering committee on board, and we all agreed that these were the sort of 4 main areas we wanted to look at. We stuck with our cultivations. We've brought the best, the worst, and one in the middle through for this year. Cover crops is a big thing for our open day in 2016, so we put in some cover crops. Nutrition was a main one that we decided we would quite like to dabble into. We're pretty standard on our fertiliser treatments, and seed spacing was one that sort of flagged up on our open day. It's got a wee video for you to watch.
So Mark Stallam at Spot Farm 2017 in Scotland, basically looking at the first of the commercial treatments in the cultivation demonstration. So standard practice before we started in 2016 was to bed form at 12 inches or 30 centimetres, bed till to the full depth down to 12 inches, and then destone down to the same depth. So we've got a bed effectively 30 centimetres deep. The work that we've been doing with AHDB over the period sort of 2011 to 2016 has shown that we can come appreciably shallower than that, maybe 2-3 centimetres, and still achieve a marketable yield that's as high or higher than the standard practice that many growers actually do. So we've asked our question over that 5-year period of AHDB work to look at why we need to cultivate considerably deeper than we currently plant, maybe 15, 16 centimetres here on a plant here in this field. Looking at the seed size and looking at how deep the deepest tubers are, the optimal depth for actually harvesting would be somewhere in the region of 27, 28 centimetres of cultivated soil to harvest. So that's a saving of 2 or 3 centimetres that we could gain. What's that going to have in terms of productivity? The results of the previous work showed that we've got over 70 experiments where the direction is that we can actually improve yield by around 2 tonnes per hectare by coming 2 or 3 centimetres shallower in all of our operations. So we talk about destoning depth. If we come shallower in that depth, we can also bed till. If we bed till shallower, we can also bed form shallower as well. So the whole system needs to be matched to the deepest depth that you're actually cultivating for planting. The treatments we've got at Spot Farm this year are very much reduced. We had 8 last year, we've only got 4 this year. And the biggest contrast are really, do we need to bed till? So we've taken that out as an operation, which is an appreciable saving in costs and what is really quite a slow operation. The other one is to basically shallow destone, but bed till only the top half of the bed down to 6 inches rather than the full depth of 12. Interestingly, the steering committee came up with another approach that whereby instead of bed forming, they would actually bed till directly onto the plough in a wide system. So a large tractor is required to pull that through, but it saves an operation. We're looking at costs and we're looking at overall labour savings in terms of the planting operation. But ultimately the growers are here to look at the crop as it appears in the growing situation, and when they get the results back either from the results day or from pack-out data, they'll actually be able to appreciate what they've seen in the field and perhaps see there were no differences actually in the crop growing behind them, and see that actually we've got an improvement in yield and improvement in productivity.
We included cover crops in our 2017 trial because it was very much a hot topic at our summer meeting last year. Quite a few people had asked if we were doing anything with cover crops and thought it should be included for these trials. The idea of trying the cover crops was probably more for soil conditioning. We thought we had a low-lying, wet, heavy area of the field, and if we had cover crops in that area and left them all winter, then we would condition the soil. It would be easier work in the spring and possibly a bit drier. In the springtime, we ploughed in the cover crops probably about 3 weeks before we planted the potatoes. There was quite a bit of a difference between the untreated plot and the plots with the cover crops in them. Noticeably a lot more root structure in them. They were easier worked and they were considerably drier than they would have been. We had 3 different types of cover crops in and 1 untreated area. They were all ploughed 3 weeks before we planted the potatoes, and they were considerably drier than they would have been. There was a lot more root structure where the cover crops were compared to the stubble part, and we probably used a lot less tillage to try and break these clods down. We planted the cover crops in the first week of September, straight into some stubble. They grew all winter time. We had a vitality mix, we had a winter oats, and we had a structure mix, and then alongside those three we had a bare stubble area which we then ploughed. The vitality mix was a mixture of radish, vetch and a wee bit of winter oats. Top tip for establishing a cover crop would probably be to get the cover crop in as early as you can in the autumn time. Our cover crops, they probably grew about 12 inches tall, but ideally if we could have got them in earlier, you know, they could have been 18 inches, 2 foot tall. Just one more. Sorry. There's one more. We chose to focus on nutrition for this year because fertiliser is obviously one of the most expensive inputs we put into our crop, and if we can reduce that in any way without compromising our yield or compromising our skin finish, our quality, our pack out, then it's something that we should look into. Our fertiliser rates are based on the AHDB nutrient guide, with a few twists for some of our different plots. We planted one of our plots as the sort of farm standard, and that was the sort of benchmark where we based all our other fertiliser trials on. The farm standard fertiliser applications are 147 kilos of nitrogen applied at planting time, with a further top dress at tuber initiation with calcium nitrate, which adds around another 30 kilos of nitrogen per hectare. The second treatment we tried was exactly the same as our farm standard at planting time, 147 kilos of nitrogen a hectare, but with no top dress, so there'll be nothing added as at tuber initiation. So that's a wee bit of information for our 2017. What's next for 2018? We are going to stick with our four main plots, our cultivation, seed spacing, nutrition and cover crops, which are already in the ground. There's going to be a few wee tweaks. We would quite like to plant some seed, which we think will be achievable. We might do something with irrigation. Where we are in Scotland, we don't always need irrigation. So we might try something with that. And the final thing is a bit more in precision technology. We do have a budget there to spend, so we're going to go ahead and spend it. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kerr. We do have a bit of time for a couple of questions, if anybody has any questions for Kerr. We have a roving microphone, so if you have a question, can you give your name and where you're from before you ask your question? Okay, any burning questions? There'll be some time at the end as well, once we've heard all the speakers to ask questions. Actually, I have a question for Kerr, which is, what made you decide to become a spot farmer at the beginning? What was it about that prospect, which was probably pretty unknown at the time?
We were quite keen to have a spot farm project in our area. As I say, we are in probably one of the densely populated potato growing areas of Scotland, and we were quite keen to learn a wee bit more, a wee bit of innovation, just to see how, just to meet people, a bit more networking, stuff like that. But no, it's a really interesting project, and we sort of look forward to the next 2 years.
Thanks very much. Our next speaker is Emma Kelcher, who is Technical Manager at Elveden Farms, and has been part of that business, I think, since February, so hasn't been involved for a huge length of time with the farm or with the spot farm, but certainly speaking to her last night, it became very apparent that she is highly motivated and inspired by the whole process. So I'll hand over to Emma.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So our aim this afternoon is to give you a bit of an insight into Elveden Estate, and then some thoughts on our experiences from hosting the Spot Farm East Initiative for over the past 2 years. So, sorry Andrew can't be here today, but you've got me instead. So, this is a map of or an outline, should I say, of the actual estate. An interesting coincidence that when Andrew actually drew this was the resemblance to an elephant, which is harking back to our estate's Indian ownership. Okay, so the estate has been owned by the Guinness family since 1894. The agriculture history of the estate started with the second Earl, who established a reputation as a prime milk and livestock producer. Using Lurkin for forage and manure as the source of nutrition, the Breckland soils are naturally short of nutrients and low water holding capacity, so additions of organic matter are vital to its longevity. At its peak, in the 1970s, the farm supported 2,000 dairy cows, 4 beef herds, 2 sheep flocks, and 3 pig herds. In 1980, we saw the withdrawal from the milk and move into further arable cropping, with the farming economy being dependent on sugar beet and cereals. The mid-1980s saw the development of the water resource on Elveden, on the estate, and the introduction of field-scale vegetables. In the late 1990s, saw a transition from 3 geographical farms to a single farming business. The advances in mechanical output and machinery capabilities, reducing the resource from the 9 combines down to 2. So in 1997, the business invested heavily in the expansion of the root vegetable production and on the estate with bespoke onion storage and expansion of irrigation infrastructure. This created the opportunity for change in customer focus and the move into building closer working relationships across all crops. 2014 saw the move into farming land not owned by the estate. So not just all about farming at Elveden, we also have Elveden Retail. So the courtyard and all the retail section was established in 2007 through the conversion of our late 19th century workshop. This development and expanded to include the retail outlet as it is today. The courtyard restaurant is a very popular daytime venue, but even hosts evening entertainment. And the Elveden Inn opened in November 2011 after a large refurbishment. We then have 12,000 hectares of woodland, producing 14,000 tonnes of timber, supporting many species. The main thrust of the forestry business is growing and marketing Christmas trees, alongside the management of the estate's woodland and all the shelter belts. Hedges, back to bringing innovation. So innovative landscapes. The instant hedge was an idea developed from within the Woods team to be able to supply a pre-hedge of diverse species in a ready-made format. This enterprise currently has around 43 kilometres of hedge in the ground, which adds tremendous diversity to the fields it is all grown in. And here we are, farming. So, our farm extends to over 4,900 hectares, most of which is on the estate, but also includes 1,200 hectares of third-party farmland under various agreements in Suffolk, Norfolk and Lincolnshire. Our main crops are onions, potatoes, carrots, parsnips and sugar beet. Cereals are used as our break crop, rye, wheat and barley. Specialist crop marketing. So we have 2 main crops, onions and potatoes on the estate, which are marketed through our specialist marketing businesses. Elveden Produce markets all our onions, and the Garden of Elveden markets all our potatoes. So they are selling them in a range of branded products. Well, how did it all begin, and how did we get into Spot? and what got us involved. It was actually the result of a conversation around the table with Jenny and Phil in 2015, where they were looking to expand the Spot Farm initiative into the east of England. After a successful first year in the West, we were interviewed along with a few other growers before being offered the chance to host it for 3 years. Once selected, it was a short time frame to get the first year up and running. The first hurdle was to secure our match funding from the Greater Cambridgeshire and Peterborough LEP. This involved a short presentation and an interview at one of their board meetings. Perhaps a little bit like Dragon's Den. So, once this was secured, the first year was a bit of a whirlwind in terms of deciding what we were going to do, look at, and how we were going to practically put it all together. It was at this stage that we found the steering group committee of great value, especially in their first year. So these are our visitor numbers from 2016 to 2017. And what we'd like to show here is what other things you actually need to think about other than the visitors. So they're great, but there's a lot of other things to think about. Looking at our visitor numbers, we also need to think about our logistics, our locations, the challenge of having rotational crops widely spread around the estate, and having the right things that are subject to the trial requirements. Also, don't forget the portaloos. So, as well as that, also don't forget that it's good to have alternative hosts so you can have internal team meetings and also private or spin-off events from also being part of Spot. It's important to remember your sponsors for the open days and are very important to the event to help add another dynamic. Don't restrict yourself to just your sector. Open it to everyone, such as Cambridge Water, the catchments trusts, because we all need to learn from each other, best practices and what our current values are. Yeah. Open day sponsors. Not sure if we quite cracked this one yet, but certainly 2017 felt better than 2016. A balance of having enough stands, but not too many, that a footfall is poor for some people. Layout is important, food, loos, and the weather is all you can pray for. So our actual trials. So we're demonstrating and monitoring the efficiency of 12 residual herbicides, combinations and options on all weeds present on the site. Expected weed spectrum was to include mayweed, groundsel, fat hen, nettle, annual meadowgrass, bindweed, knotgrass, and cleavers. We then used herbicides, linuron, benzamethylin, metribuzin, diquat, metrobromin, clomazone, fluorocarb, fluoxetine, and metribuzin, all of which were applied at 200 litres of water per hectare. Our varieties included Brook, Challenger, Daisy, Eurostar, Forza, Innovator, Jelly, Leontine, Lenormand, Maris Pear, Maris Piper, Marfona, Marquise, Melody, Nectar, Performer, Royal, Rooster, Russet Burbank, Sapphire, Saxon, Shepherdy, Soraya, and also Vela Sovereign. Application dates, all treatments were to be applied in 2 blocks. So we had a pre-emergence in 1 to 12s and a post-emergence in 13 to 15. The manipulation of tuber numbers. This demonstration was to seek to show the effects of chronological seed age, the physiological seed age, and the ethylene seed treatment on tuber numbers in Maris Pear, Marquise, Maris Piper, and Shepherdy potatoes. Nitrogen. So we had another nitrogen trial with the interaction of irrigation. So our standard split farm practice is 80 kilos of N per hectare pre-planting, 100 kilos of N per hectare at emergence, 40 kilos a hectare at 10 millimetre tubers diameter, totaling 220 kgs of N. Our standard rate is 220 kilos. We then did an optimal rate of 180 kilos of N per hectare, 160 and 160 plus a top-up. This was all. We also placed 20 kgs of N at pre-planting, with 200 kilos of N as a liquid injection on the planter. Another big thing for us is common scab in our pre-pack and our salads. So common scab is caused by, I'm not even going to try and pronounce it, and other Streptomyces species. That was widely distributed in most soils. Infection with common scab leads to rejections, causing significant reduction in the value, particularly in crops where skin appearance is most important. So different varieties vary in susceptibility to scab. This demonstration was a repeat of work in 2016, and we even added another variety called Butte. We looked at timings on boom irrigation at 2 soil moisture deficits in bed. So we had 10 mil and 20 mil with a boom width of 72 metres. One treatment half frequency of a standard commercial practice, but twice the amount. The other treatment, standard commercial practice, 15 mil, timing with the tuber initiation. We also had an unreplicated block. So our additional learning. It's always interesting what you learn that you didn't actually expect to investigate. In our first year, our PCN trial was persistently attacked by the red deer. However, only the small trial areas with non-tolerant varieties were actually targeted. Having spoken to our forestry manager about this, we have deduced that the stress potato plant is trying to grow rapidly to repair the damage that was caused by the PCN, and so is reducing a lot of sugars. This is what we think the deer are smelling, as the deer sense of smell is over 1,000 times more sensitive than our humans. We are taking this learning to see if we can conjure up ways of pulling deer away from high-value crops to other sweeter crops and plants. So the complexity. We all have a good, pretty picture, but actually they do have some meanings. So within here we have 3 different pictures. By having these drone pictures, we can actually show differences in the canopy and the irrigation. It's also the level of detail that you pick up. And also, having all this level of detail, you can easily pass it on to your tractor drivers, because at the end of the day, they need to understand what they're planting and what they're covering. Well, how has it worked for Elveden? So far, so good. We can't complain. It has enabled us, and hopefully others, to benefit from getting academia and technology out into the field. Right. I guess we are lucky in the potato sector having organisations such as NIABCAF, who are very used to doing on-farm trials. I think the landscape is changing rapidly in favour of all access to fast learning, but we have to keep fueling the fire of thirst for knowledge and the improvements. Not sure if we'll ever be there fully, but we feel we have made some good advances. There are several frustrations we have had over subject areas and topics which are massively important to us, and our continued sustainabilities. We have long held the view that we have a great story, producing great products and enhancing the environment. As we do it, but we have been weak in what we can demonstrate. The Spot Farm has given us that opportunity, the vehicle by which to learn more in depth about what we are actually doing. But we also, it's how we can positively influence what we're actually doing. More importantly, to demonstrate the metrics to back up our previous beliefs. This sums up what we are at. We have had we have a need to find ways to learn and be able to answer our challenges quicker than ever. We are losing traditional methods of solving problems and have new challenges to face. How are we going to be able to tell Mr. Gove how well we are looking after his soil if I can't measure the actual key dynamics of it? We have also been able to bolt on aside other funded work. This has enabled us to extend the topic areas for learning on and to give another dynamic to the open days. Such things as our runoff trials. Is this a clicker? Yeah. Another way we've accessed in-field work is through cross-sector collaboration, as I referred to earlier. This year, we hosted a multi-sector funded project looking at soil erosion through water under different irrigation practices and using different wheeling distributors. And of course, essential to all runoff trials is a portaloo. There's supposed to be a video. This shows the different machines that we used in this project, and we'll all see the results on January the 8th. Enough of the screeching. So, tips for cereals and oilseed and any other strategic farm initiative. Oh. As previously mentioned, we found the steering group especially valuable in year one, as having people on it who have been involved with something similar before. Preparation is everything. The better the preparation, the easier and the better the trials become. Also, there is a good value to spread of opinions. Our policy is to squeeze as much in as you can. We only get one opportunity every 12 months, so have to maximize the opportunities. The extra hassle of putting more complexity into the trials is always worth it as they progress. It is also important that anyone attending the trials gives positive feedback on what works and what doesn't. The idea is to create a cross-industry learning platform whose success relies on the support from the visitors, the hosts, and including AHDB. This doesn't mean dressing up in fancy outfits. It's not me, by the way. Although perhaps that gives me an idea for next year. By this, we mean your input as a host is a vital ingredient. Some of our problems will have specific twists to our own locations. However, there are always points of good value to take away and try at home. So always strive to drive what you want to see. What other opportunities are there to use a year's hard work as widely as possible? We would do this through any other initiative we deem relevant. These could be through visits from outside groups as part of our leaf demonstration, farm or McDonald's flagship farm initiatives. It's always really important to us not to miss the opportunity to communicate our in-house team on how important accuracy, new technologies are to our actual production. We feel this is really important, that we realise we need to grow our future customers as well as all our crops. I'm nearly there. We always like to emphasise that it's not just Andrew at the forefront of all these men, but people have the biggest impact on how we perform. But we're also good sounding boards for what may or may not work. And one last thought. The target we should set ourselves should be that the only thing that leaving a field is the produce we set out to grow. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Emma. I'm sure I'm not alone in feeling slightly blown away by the scale of some of what you presented there. But I think it's really important to note that our strategic farms don't all have to be at that sort of size and scale, and that works incredibly well for the Elveden estate. But actually, our strategic farms can fit the model of the particular farm business. And actually, our next presenter, Matthew Wallace from Hill Farms in Shropshire, is a case in point where actually the focus for the strategic farms is far more clear and focused on a particular and important subject, which I'm sure will be familiar to many of you. So if I hand over to Matthew, he'll describe a little bit more about what he's setting up in his first year as a spot farm.
Good afternoon. There's several reasons really why we decided to sign up to the Spot Farm initiative and to host the trials. For us in North Shropshire, and being a farm that's growing quite a large acreage of potatoes in quite a competitive area, PCN was deemed as one of our main challenges going forward. We're in competition for ground, and that ground you're probably renting has an element of PCN in it anyway, so soil-borne disease and rhizoctonias, I think, including the PCN, are the biggest challenges we face going forward. So a opportunity to host a trial on your own farm is something that I, hold very close to my heart, because as a big grower, you haven't got time to focus on this in a scientific manner. So we decided to look at several things to do with PCN. One of the main questions I keep getting asked is, why are you growing potatoes on PCN-infested ground? It's something that we've really got to get on with, and we have proved that we can grow crops of potatoes on PCN-infested land, crops of good quality, what our customer requires, and it's how we manage PCN going forward, which I think to be critical. We had the guts to tackle the PCN problem in public, and in practice the trials weren't too time-consuming. I didn't want to be too tied up in trials, being so busy, so that opportunity was there for somebody to come in and have a scientific approach to some of the problems we've had. And although we haven't had the results just yet, hopefully those results will be able to give us meaningful answers to some of the problems we've had and change some of our farming practices going forward. Increase our competitiveness in a very, very tight farming sector, increase our sustainability, and hopefully reduce our addiction to nematicides. So I am looking forward to the results in earnest, and I hope we can put some of those ideas into practice. I hope that visitors to the farm can also put some of those findings into practice when we hold our results day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Any questions for Matthew? No. Okay, I think we'll move on to our final speaker, Chris Wilson, from Dillington Estate, who is also another one of our newer Spot Farm hosts. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name's Chris Wilson, and I manage the Dillington Estate, which is about nearly 1,500 hectares of Somerset, and we've got a potato enterprise, quite a big dairy, quite a lot of offices. It's a sort of traditional rural estate, but a lot smaller than your one, but same sort of thing, quite a diverse portfolio. We were approached by Branson, who have got a pack house two miles down the road from us, and it was suggested that we might like to do the Spot Farm thing. And I'm a bit older than my colleagues here, and I've tried to resist the temptation to get involved in these things, because it's always more work than you think. But anyway, customer's always right, so we'll try and facilitate this this thing. And the things we got involved in this particular season was nitrogen trials with Electra, because in the southwest, Electra is a very important variety to the growers, but it's got issues with skin set and it doesn't always taste that nice. So our customer was interested in it. We were interested in that particular aspect. So that was the main focus of this year. And we were also going to try and do a little bit of an irrigation trial as well, but it rains all the time in the southwest, so we didn't actually put any water on this particular field. And we're also quite interested in cover crops, which we've already been doing a bit of sort of fiddling internally with, and I was interested to hear that you're doing the same. Well, we'll come back to questions in a minute, but I've got a question for you. So it all went off quite well at the beginning. I made it pretty clear at the beginning. I wanted it simple. I wanted no involvement whatsoever except to facilitate the fields and host the days. And communication initially wasn't as good as it could have been. Partly our fault, partly AHDB or whatever you're called. But collectively over the season, particularly Branson were very important in providing some of the help in actually collating the information. So it was a three-way collaboration, and we had a few open days, which I must say were for me were the best bit so far, because they were. I thought we were going to have more people. I thought 3 visits was going to be too many, and I was proved wrong in a good way, because we had lots of people on each occasion, and the extra speakers that we had from various places were very good, and that was for us. For me, the best part about it was the having 3 meetings, which again just beforehand I think, why the hell are we doing this? We've got plenty of things to do, but on each occasion they were really good days, to be fair, and I probably wouldn't have gone if someone else was hosting it. So selfishly, we got a lot out of the work because of those days. And also, amazingly, the trial we did, which is fairly simple, which, different nitrogen rates for Electra, turned out to be something you could measure, and the results were what we wanted them to be. And on this occasion, less is more. So there's a result which we can now quantify, and we're going to do a similar version this season to try and see if we can shave some more off, and just to make sure that it wasn't just a fluke of nature, that the results we got were the ones we expected. So it's actually been a really good experience for us so far. It wasn't without its problems, but I think it'll be better this coming season, because we're already sort of planning to try and take away some of the hiccups we had last time around. So overall, been a really good experience, and our buyers' input I felt was also quite important, because obviously research without a proper end isn't that useful, or potentially not that useful. I'll just check my little crib sheet, which in case anything else. Yeah. Anyway, it was better than I anticipated, and I'm looking forward to continuing. And in all these things, keep it simple, which clearly your gang aren't. But we try and keep it a little bit.
I would agree with you.
Yeah, we'll do the questions, but I want one for you when we're ready for questions. That'll do for now, won't it? Yeah, that's.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all our speakers. We do have some time for questions, but I do just want to make a quick comment that a key element of our strategic farm programme is the farmers and the farm managers who are involved themselves, and the inspiration that they bring to others, to their colleagues, to the people in the region. And it's very clear to me that we have some very inspiring people involved in our Spot Farm programme. So over to you for questions, but also over to you for questions as well. I don't know whether you want to kick off, Chris.
Yeah. I'm quite interested in the whole cover crop thing, because I think the same as you, that you're improving the soil structure, you're drying the soil out. It should be better in terms of establishing a seedbed in the spring, but I can't measure it. And so far, you and your pals haven't come up with a method that I can see is going to be definitive measuring.
Not yet. I think last year, I say we had this one wet, heavy area that we were trying to condition the soil. This year, going into 2018, we have strips up and down our field, and we will manage to measure.
But how are you going to measure it? Because all the things you said, I think we've seen, and we're doing it again, and we've got strips of this and that. But how are you actually going to measure it? What are you going to measure?
Speed, fuel efficiency.
Just off the gadget, off the tractor?
Yeah, no, somebody's standing time in it.
Right.
Just as we've done, I mean, all our cultivation stuff we've done is just up to date. We have measured fuel, diesel, AdBlue, timing, everything right the way through. So if we can get strips from one end of the field to the other, then we can pick beds out and we can time bed tiller, stone separators all the way across. And hopefully we will see something. I would hope we would anyway.
Yeah. Well,
The biggest problem we've got with cover crops in Scotland is trying to get them established early enough. If we take a cereal crop off, we, in a good year, could have 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks of good growing. Be slightly different down south. But if we end up with a really wet, miserable, cold autumn, then we could have cover crops that would be 2 or 3 inches tall. Yeah. That's our biggest challenge with cover crops in Scotland.
I think that's raised some very interesting points around actually what is innovation and particularly how we measure things. And very often the innovation is in that capacity to measure something that we haven't been able to measure before, even if it's a very simple method of doing so. Yeah, I think that's the essence in a way of what our Spot Farm programme brings. Question here.
Obviously, 4 committed people here. Would like to ask each person if they could actually give one example of something new that they've learnt which could have an appreciable benefit to their business.
You want to start, Kerr?
Probably, I mean, the big thing for me was cultivations. We were, in 2016, we were probably guilty of bed tilling far too much. And with a wee bit of confidence through our 2016 trials, we have changed our whole sort of farming cultivations quite considerably. We are, to give you an example, we used to stone separate all our land at 12 inches deep. With the results from our 2016 trials for 2017, we reduced that to 10 inches. So we are stone separating at 10 inches, which gives us better efficiency, better speed, better fuel usage. And that's one thing I probably wouldn't have tried without a wee bit of confidence from our trials. Again, we've taken that through for our 2017, it'll be 2018, 2019 as well. And hopefully after 3 years, it'll give everybody else a bit more confidence to go and try it. What we're trying to do is to get people to go and try these things at home, and hopefully they'll have a bit of confidence in what we do and see what we're doing it right, that they will go and try it at home. That's what we're aiming for.
So for me, having not been there over a year yet, and only involved in Spot once, but one of our most interesting things I think is our runoff. So it's quite a really big thing being on the land that we're on in the sand. So I think being able to use machinery to help with our runoff work is something we will definitely be taking forward.
And for us, because we were very specific in wanting to do the nitrogen amounts for Electra, it's confirmed what we all thought was true. The less nitrogen you put on, the faster the skin set, and possibly actually an increase in yield to some degree, but more importantly the skin set and the dry matter. So we've now got the confidence to go lower than we have been, and if you go higher, then you definitely give yourselves loads of problems. So it's sort of it's proved so far what we suspected, but it just gives us some confidence to go lower.
For me, we're still waiting for any meaningful results, so it's difficult to implement any changes to the farm at all in that period. But just on some sort of field observations, the biggest thing for me has been seeing what varieties are available to us, and how both tolerance and resistance to PCN sort of show themselves very differently in the field. Also, some varieties that you wouldn't expect to perform well in a high PCN situation visibly seem to have done incredibly well, and whether that's quirky to the season or quirky to our area. But I look forward to the results. We tried them with and without nematicides. We tried different nematicides. We tried trap crops, which I was a little sceptical of because I thought we would struggle to get any of these nightshades established. Although they weren't, stonking crops, they did germinate, which is more than I thought they probably would do. And they were there, so if we have got any results from that, that would be, very interesting. But it's how I wanted. I didn't want any involvement in terms of, I didn't want it to take up all of my time, but I wanted reliable results that we could use to take forward. And so, I'm hoping for initial PCN counts and PCN counts, after cropping. So, as I said before, I look forward to those.
Thank you. I think there's a message there as well, that actually the programme has enabled the farms to try things that they wouldn't normally have had the confidence to do. And as we go forward and those messages are communicated to the wider audience, hopefully that will give other farmers and growers the confidence to try things which they wouldn't normally do. And that is the process of accelerating innovation into our farms. Any further questions? One at the back just there.
Just one question to Bruce Farm. I'm just surprised that you're selling all of your product through one person.
Right. That's what we do. That's we've dealt with Bartlett's for quite a number of years, over 20 years, and we've not had any problems with them in the past. So why change? That's what we've done. And I think if there was an issue, it would have probably been flagged up before then, and we would have jumped ship and moved somewhere else.
Okay, well, thank you all very much for attending. There are just a couple of things that I want to say to you before you leave. You've heard some really inspiring and interesting stories from the Spot Farms. Please, can I encourage you to look out for the events that will be taking place on those farms, the results meetings in the autumn and early spring, and the open days in the summer. They really are events well worth attending. And can I also, for any of you who've been truly inspired, to consider applying to be a strategic farm in your own right. We actually have a call open at the moment for a new Spot Farm in the north. Anybody who's interested, please contact my colleague Graham Bannister, who's sitting at the back. If you want to give a little wave, Graham. So if anybody has got interest in becoming part of this growing network of farms, then please do get in touch with us as soon as you can. The presentations from today are available on the link shown on the screen there. So if any of you are interested in looking at those again or passing them on to friends and colleagues, please do. Other than that, please enjoy the rest of BP 2017 and have safe journeys home. Thank you very much.